Today we're going to speak a lot about what concerns us, the country, and the world. So welcome to a new edition of React Today as part of the World's Way Out project. Okay, today is Tuesday, January 22nd. It's 2:42 here in Alberta. People are saying that Alberta wants to get away from Canada. That's not the case. Let's take a look to my guess. The Israeli lobby, plutocrats, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, in gold we trust our path to eternity, and of course the Jewish state by Theodore Herzl. I have to mention that the Israeli lobby is Stephen M. Walt and John Mersheimer. I have to mention that the Protocols of Zion are unedited. Nobody knows who the author is, even though, okay, you have to read it yourself. The third one is my book, In Gold We Trust, Our Path to Eternity, which is basically the reality of truth. Because according to my philosophy and my experience, the truth is divided. The truth is relative, the truth is revealed, and the truth is absolute. We can discuss any of them. That's what I do in this essay. It's 378 pages, 2014. I speak about a lot of things that I have predicted also. So yeah, whatever. Feel free to read it. And the last one, you already saw it, Theodore Herzl. So Plutocrats, it's a book written by Angelina Jolie. I'm just kidding. It's Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland, it's the author of that book. She was interviewed by Bill Moyers, if anybody remembered Bill Moyers, just a little after she published the book. And when you see that interview, compare her to what she did as a Canadian foreign ministry. Well, she did good with the Saudis, I have to say, in the beginning of the mandate of Justin Trudeau. She did well when this person asked for, she didn't want to get back to Saudi Arabia. So she bunked herself in the hotel and said her cousin, her uncle, her everybody from Saudi Arabia came, hey, we're taking you home. And she said, no, no, no. I'm not going to rehab in Saudi Arabia. Forget about it. And she was accepted. She was important in that, Chrystia Freeland, that matters. And she was also present when she wrote the book, which is, her title itself said. There, let me give it to you. This was on Bill Moyers' interview. Plutocrats. The rise of the new global super rich and the fall of everyone else. And guess what? Once she got a position in government invited by Justin, not only a plutocrat himself by family and tradition, but when it comes to oligarchies, and what people used to call in the old days aristocracy, and they still are, and they still believe they're aristocracy, and they are in the sense that they go to the best universities in the world, they support the best universities, they have all the money in the world. And we're talking about oil and gas industry, we're talking about OPEC, OPEP, whatever, depends on the language you translate that from. We're talking about the realities of this world in the 21st century, which were not supposed to be happening the way we are witnessing they're happening. And I'm speaking about 2001, which I, of course, transmitted live for 15 countries in Central and South America from English. It was CNN who transmitted. I only saw the second plane. I transmitted the issues. You have to see my programs before, blah, etc. My point is that the United States is going to go to war against Iran. I call it Iran, whatever. And that's going to be the biggest mistake of Israel, because the United States is absolutely controlled by Israel. We all know that, since 1948. And like videos like this, for example, tells you guys that Israel is an invasive species that doesn't understand reasoning, that doesn't understand mathematics. They only understand violence, crude violence, genocide. And they're not going to do it only against Palestine. They're already doing it in America.
Well, this is shocking. At the Israeli American Council, billionaires were asked how they buy and influence American politics. And they essentially, Miriam Adelson is a bit mum about it, but they don't deny that this is exactly what they're doing. Now, who are these billionaires? You have Haim Saban. He's an Israeli-American billionaire media executive. He is an extremely influential political donor, specifically to Democratic politics, whereas Miriam Adelson, there on the stage with him, donates to Republicans. So both sides there happily getting along, gleefully chatting about how they buy U.S. politicians, both the left and the right, completely bought off by Israeli billionaires. Haim Saban made his fortune in children's television. You probably know best Power Rangers. He was behind that. He's the founder of Saban Entertainment, co-founded Univision Communications. He's worth several $billions, gives tons of money to the Democratic Party, extremely close to Hillary Clinton and the Clinton political network. And he says he is a one-issue guy. And that issue for him is Israel. Miriam Adelson, on the other hand, is the wife of Sheldon Adelson, who owned casinos, Las Vegas Sands casino billionaires. She's a medical doctor, but her husband owning casinos. Major donor, political donor to the Republican Party in particular, has given hundreds of millions of dollars to Donald Trump, has promised to give him hundreds of millions more if he runs for a third term. She's also a one-issue person, and that is Israel. So when asked, how do you buy and exercise influence over politicians in the U.S., this is what Haim Saban had to say.
We had many sessions here about how important it is to get involved, to build a relationship with politicians, and to have access. And access and relationship can buy you influence, doesn't mean it's going to buy you. So you both master that. So can you share with us, I want everyone to learn today, how do you build a relationship with the politician? I know there is always money involved because that.
And he says this, you both mastered that, by the way. He says, you both mastered that, like the buying of American politicians. So how do you do it?
Part of the system. But the relationship is not always just about money, because to have the access and to have the relationship to create an influence, you need not just the money. So we have 4,000 people here. I want them to hear from the best, you and Miri, about how do you do that?
Well, you just get a guy named Epstein and you blackmail them with kiddie porn. That's what you do.
Well, Miri and Sheldon Yizichro Baruch have been much more generous than me, so why don't you turn around and ask her that?
I'm going to ask her, but you both made a lot of connection and made a big influence.
Now what I gave is this. This is what they gave is this. But it's the same principle. I understand what you're asking. I want to be cautious it's a system that we did not create. It's a system that's in place. It's a legal system. And we just play within the system. And that's it. I mean, it's just really quite simple. If you support a politician, you, under normal circumstances, should have access to be able to share opinions and try to help them see your point of view. That's what access grants you. And the contribution and the financial support grants you the access. So, I mean, those that give more have more access, and those that give less have less access. It's a simple math, trust me.
He's not wrong. It's not really their fault that they're able to do what they do. It's our fault. It's our system. The system's in place, and our politicians are up for sale. And that should be very scary to everybody. You got all these champions of Israel first, politicians who've been bought off by the Israelis, And, they're just taking the money and saying what they need to say in order to placate their donors. But that donor could be anybody. I mean, it could end up eventually being the Chinese. I'm sure they're figuring it out. The Cubans were very powerful in Florida. Now the Israelis are very powerful in Florida and the rest of the United States. And soon it'll be the Chinese, or who knows who else. I don't know. I wish I could predict the future. But it could be anybody. And that is because our system is set up that way. And he's not wrong in that. I do also want to point out, and I wonder if this is lost on the America First, MAGA, we got to build America for America, white America, that crowd. Is it lost on them that these two have accents? I mean, I don't know. Do they realize, these people are from Israel, and yes, they've gained American citizenship, but they've come to this country from a different country. They've gained citizenship, and then they use a ton of money, and they openly say their one issue is their home country. They infiltrate our country, gain citizenship in order to buy our politicians for the benefit of their home country. That, to me, is grounds for stripping your citizenship away if we were going to do that. If they're going to talk about stripping citizenship, which they often talk about in that crowd, this would be the first two that you should take it from. But of course, they don't want to do that because that means they wouldn't get all that money. Now, Miriam Adelson was asked the same question. This is what she says. Both parties want you to believe they're working for the people, but let's be honest. Washington is bought and paid for. Big corporations in Wall Street get bailed out while working Americans get left with higher prices, shrinking savings, and endless promises that never materialize. The system is corrupt, and when it breaks, they won't be the ones paying the price. We will. That's why I put my trust in something outside of their control. Physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold. Precious metals are real, tangible, and they've held their value through every economic collapse in history. You can have them delivered straight to your home or secured in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. American Hartford Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of 5-star reviews. And right now, when you call and mention my name, Kim, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver with your purchase. So call 866-584-3884 or text Kim to 65532. That's 866-584-3884 or text Kim, K-I-M, to 65532. Don't wait for politicians to fix a system they benefit from. Protect yourself today.
Miri, you and Sheldon created a lot of relationship over the years with politicians at the state level, especially at the federal level. I want you to share with everyone why is it so important and how do you do it? Again, writing checks is part of it, but there is more than writing just checks. So how do you do it?
Can you allow me not to answer?
You choose.
I want to be truthful, and there are so many things that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want specific, but that's okay. But everyone should know here how important it is to get involved, because the reason that both of you were able to make huge differences is because you got involved. And you spent a lot of time and yes, a lot of money on it, but you got involved and you cared. And that's what everyone here need to know, that complaining and doing nothing is not going to get us anywhere. And you guys have done completely the opposite. So thank you both.
I mean, first of all, what is she talking about that she can't talk about? Okay, that's suspicious. Again, I'm just going to say Epstein again, so we don't forget. Is that what she means? Is, these kind of dark operations of blackmail and other types of influence that's just beyond money, for sure. And, right, I mean, openly talking about this is the right way to do it, guys. He's cheering this on, this guy who's leading this Israeli-American Council little forum here. This is the way to do it. We got to get in there and buy them up and influence them. And we get them to do what we want them to do for our country. That's what we've got to do. I mean, it is, wake up, America. Wake up. And this is the fruits of their rewards a bit here. Here's Ron DeSantis. I want to show you this. He's tells the Israeli-American Council that there's never been a Palestine, and that phrases from the river to the sea are equivalent to chanting about a second Holocaust.
When you say from the river to the sea, you are chanting in favor of a second Holocaust. That's what that means. Now, I do think some of these students are just ignorant. I don't think they understand even what they're talking about. You hear some of them talking about end the occupation of Palestine. And I just think they need a little history lesson. There has never been a Palestinian Arab state. Prior to the First World War, you had hundreds of years of occupation under the Ottoman Empire. It was not a Palestinian Arab state. Then you had the British Mandate for Palestine. Then you had a partition plan from the UN, Jewish state and Arab state. The Jews accepted the state and founded Israel. The Arabs rejected the state and they went to war to try to eradicate Israel, and they lost. And they went to war again and they lost in 67 and 73 and throughout the intifadas. And so, no, that land historically has no stronger connection than any group of people except the Jewish people. It goes back thousands of years. Read your Bible.
So Ron DeSantis is there at the Israeli-American Council. Obviously, he's going to run again for president when Trump is no longer eligible, if that day arrives. And he's there begging for money. He's wanting that Miriam Adelson money. That's what he's there to do. So he's there saying, look, I would be on your side. I'd continue the Israeli agenda. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. This is not America first at all. I also want to show you this clip. I mean, there's many examples of our politicians being bought off by Israel, but this is just a couple that I want to show you just as a reminder. But this is Florida and Georgia lawmakers, and they are pushing to adopt Judea and Samaria as the name of the West Bank, which is the term that the Palestinians reject. It's the term that the Israelis use for the region. And if they get their way, it's basically a way of erasing the Palestinian claim to any of the land. This is American lawmakers, once again, bought off.
It's an honor for that. And just a brief synopsis of the bill. We're just simply requiring all state documents to refer to the land which is called the West Bank by some as the biblical heartland, and the historical name Judea and Samaria. West Bank was it's about just rectifying and recognizing truth. And that's what we're going to stand by.
This is an important piece of legislation that, Rep. Tremont and myself really care about, and we truly need this to pass in our state of Florida to send a message that, we need to value our partnership and our allies, that we...
This bill, to recognize Judea and Samaria, it's a recognize God, they recognize the justice, and they recognize our same values, and together, God willing, we will win. Thank you very much.
Proud to continue to support you and your sovereignty, of course.
There is a sovereignty, again, restoring the historical foundation, that it restores back what was really stolen. Many times when countries come in, they rename specifically to take away that identity and foundation. So this really does bring back the strength historically, again, the sovereignty to be able to take back and possess the very land that is yours by heritage. And so we stand with you in these things.
We're going to have to do a lot of renaming of some of the states in this country, and even just the entire country itself, if we're going to go back to the original names. I mean, this logic, of course, there's no logic behind it. There's just a lot of money behind it, and a lot of influence behind it, and a lot of brainwashing and blackmailing, and that is what's behind our politicians waving the Israeli flag, gleefully censoring Americans, controlling U.S. politics, and they brag about it openly. And so many Americans are unfortunately still blind to it. But many, many are opening their eyes, waking up. And that is what we need to do, absolutely, is wake up to this, gain our country back. I'm not sure how we do it. We have to change the rules, clearly, because it's not just Israel that's able to use this system. It's anybody is able to infiltrate and start buying off our politicians we've seen this with industries. But, I'm less offended by it coming from a U.S. industry, like a U.S. corporation or U.S. industry, American industry that's buying up influence. That's like your own family talking, crap at you. You're squabbling with your own family members, and you could have those discussions. But when it's somebody from outside of your family, when it's these foreigners that come in and they're literally trying to control our politics, not for the benefit of their lives in America, of their particular group of people in America, that's one thing. But they're advocating for the benefit of a foreign country. And that is what we have to somehow change the rules of the game in order to prevent this from happening now and from happening again. Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, for free at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.
What I'm trying to say here is that Mr. Carney didn't say anything new in the end nor in the beginning of his discourse. What Mr. Mark Carney said is that we didn't expect that what we have done unto others is gonna be done unto us. And I'm talking about the 27 countries in the European Union, the Nordic countries, New Zealand, Australia. With their policies since COVID-19, they demonstrated how rich Mark Carney is in order to support everything that has to do that the Central and South global South have understood since 1492. Because in the case of Colombia and the President of Colombia, Mr. President Gustavo Petro Urrego has said specifically since the United Nations last year, we are not slaves and you talk to us as equals or forget about it. But America is coming from the World Economic Forum and is going to meet with President Gustavo Petro from Colombia, who's ex-guerrilla warfare. There's many things to talk about, President of Colombia. And he's not for the elites. We have to understand that the far right represent the elites since Franco in Spain or since whatever, since 1492. Since all the corporations that deal with buffalo skins and all that stuff, the French that exists in Quebecois, the movement of Quebecois that wants to free themselves from Canada, the liberals that came from the King, Charles III, whatever, and the fact that since 1982, Canada has said explicitly that we don't need your permission to make our own decisions here, even though we still respect you as the King of Canada and share of the Parliament, whatever, which has to change. I think Canada has said it specifically, especially when it comes to against the United States of Israel, but he didn't whatsoever address the main and the root problem of America, which is going against his own allies, and that is the state of Israel. As long as he doesn't understand that and never says it publicly, like the Conservative Party leader and the NDPs, many of the NDPs, which are accusing Heather McPherson, because she's asking what we, who serve in the military one way or another, understand to be right, and that is the rules of engagement, and that is the rules of war, and that is if any Canadian or American or European, McPherson is speaking about Canadians, have been in the IDF not only during 7 October 2023, but before, in the assassination and killings and genocide that has been defined not by me, not by CNN, not by CTTV, not by BBC, not by CBC, which I protested in front of regarding other matters years ago.
Speaker, a UN report has found that Israel's warfare in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of genocide. The Liberal government is legally obligated by the Genocide Convention to prevent and stop Netanyahu's attack on Palestinians. Turning a blind eye to mass casualties is not an option. Entire families have been decimated. Children are starving to death. When will the Liberals live up to their obligations, sanction Netanyahu and his extreme cabinet, and finally put in place an actual arms embargo?
Hear, hear. But the fact that Mark Carney, is shown of good leadership, sure. But knowing that Mark Carney is also a banker that have represented the corporations and didn't say anything before, like I have said in my program for the last 11 years, React today as part of the World's Way Out project, 11 years, is that Canada is involved in this. And supported, like he confessed, literally, when he said, and we participated in it, and we benefited from it. If you listen to the 17, 18 minutes discourse of our Prime Minister, which had nothing but respect for Canada, nothing but respect for the Prime Minister, unless the things that we will disagree with. But Canada has always supported the mining processes, the occupation, and the banana republics by force since the Dulles brothers, and even before, in 1928, I can speak about that for hours. 1928 was a protest of banana people that said, hey, you're abusing, you're not paying us any, we live in misery, our families have no food, we have no food, you're making millions. And I already spoke about that like 10 years ago, 9 years ago to 10 years ago, about how this person decided opportunistically, and that's part of business, I understand that, he got the opportunity, he said, okay, we get it, bananas, but bananas die soon, so how are we going to get it? We need to control the propaganda media, and that is consume bananas. If we have people in America, Canada, and everywhere around the world, but especially in America, to consume bananas with propaganda, they use Darby, they use whatever, the guy that said that we can smoke, the guy that said that we can go to war against Germans, and they shot them with a brute force, a gorilla with some skin on top, and a garrote, some Flintstones crap, propaganda from the First World War. I have explained that in many programs before.
If asked which fruit is your favorite, it would be no surprise if you responded with banana. Bananas are the most popular fresh fruit. We see them year-round in the grocery store and are a popular ingredient for smoothies, ice cream, and the baked good popular during the COVID-19 pandemic. But did you know that bananas and our leading supplier Chiquita is connected to one of Colombia's worst massacres? While we now know them as Chiquita, the company used to go by the name United Fruit Company. United Fruit Company was born from a merger in 1899 between Tropical Trading Transport Company and Boston Fruit Company. Tropical Trading Company was located in Central America and led by Minor C. Keith. The Boston Fruit Company was a fruit importing company in the United States established by Lorenzo Dow Baker and Andrew W. Preston. This merger combined the plantations in the West Indies and steamships from Boston Fruit Company and the plantations and railroads in Central America from Tropical Trading to create a company that dominated in the banana import business in the United States. The United Fruit Company grew and acquired more land in Latin America. They used this land to create more plantations, one of which was located in Cienega, a town near Santa Marta, Colombia. On November 12, 1928, the workers went on strike and refused to work until work conditions were improved. The workers made 9 demands to United Fruit Company: stop their practice of hiring through subcontractors, mandatory collective insurance, compensation for work accidents, hygienic dormitories and 6-day work weeks, increase in daily pay for workers who earn less than 100 pesos per month, weekly wage, abolition of office stores, abolition of payment through coupons rather than money, and improvement of hospital services. The United Fruit Company refused the demands. The losses due to the strike led them to pressure the United States and Colombian governments to solve the situation. The company's representatives contacted Frank B. Kellogg, the United States Secretary of State, falsely accusing the workers of being communists. The United States then threatened the Colombian government with an invasion by the U.S. Marine Corps if they did not stop the strike. While the pressure from the US government was a major influence for the Colombian government, there was already existing pressure from the United Fruit Company as well. The company's presence in Latin America is a prime example of neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is a practice of controlling another country through the use of economic, political, or cultural pressure. The company not only provided many citizens in Latin America jobs, they also funded schools, hospitals, and other infrastructures. Any threat which targeted United Fruit's contributions would in turn affect Colombia itself, as the economy became heavily reliant on them. The weight from both the US government's threat as well as the consequences of endangering their relationship with United Fruit resulted in Colombian government taking action against the Cienega plantation workers. Miguel Mendez, the 12th president of the Colombian government, dispatched the army regiment of Bogota to deal with the plantation workers. On December 6, 1928, the soldiers surrounded the town square where the workers and their families were protesting. They set up machine guns, closed off surrounding streets, and after banging their drums and giving a 5-minute warning, they opened fire on the men, women, and children, killing between 200 to 2,000 people and taking part in what is now called the Banana Massacre of 1928. Sadly, this controversy is one of the many surrounding Chiquita and their time in Latin America. However, it is through both the discussion and awareness of these atrocities that we become one step closer to preventing them from happening again. While I had difficulty researching the topic, I noticed a lot of discussion in recent news articles which are finally bringing this event to the public eye. Bananas are great, but like all good things, we must remember their benefits are not worth the harm they cause to others.
Okay, look at them. I'm the most censored Canadian broadcaster ever. So when we go to the Second World War and we go to the Third World War, which is already begun, but we go from Vietnam to Palestine, and the history since 1492, Central and South America has a lot of lessons to tell and to school the Europeans and the Americans about, not only the Negroes. And the First Nations, for Christ's sake, in the absence of the sacred. You can read that book. Gerrymander from Sierra Club, I'm talking about the 90s, etc. First Nations that I have covered here in my program that I have to mention also as one of the basic and importance, because in the United States, ICE is stopping First Nations, Dakotas, Sioux, whatever other denominations and tribes that belong to First Nations of America. They are the First Nations. That means they're natural born. Not killers, but peaceful people that the killers from Europe and the Americas until the Civil War of 1960, until 1965, between the North and the South, and the owners of the slave, etc. We know the story, and if you don't, well, go to the Ku Klux Klan. There's many things that talk about it. But the point is, and to finish with this, the schools of the Americas and everything that America has applied against Central and South America is coming to you. It's coming back home. What ICE is doing is nothing but the replication, and I have said it for the last 2 years, of IDF tactics and training, supported, of course, by the Palestinians, because they are the subject, they are the lab rats that, of course, Theodore Herzl began with and was supported by Ben-Gurion and Golda Meir and all prime ministers. What you're seeing here today, when I mean that the truth is that since October the 10th, the ceasefire has been broken more than 400 times by Israel. But they say, no, you're not right, you're lying, everything is lie, Israel is right, the humanitarian organizations, United Nations is not right. I have said it 100 billion times, how they shredded it 2 years ago, and saying fuck you and blame us about it. I mean, if you don't understand by now that Israel is acting like an invasive species, against us, the country and the world, you have to be very stupid. Because what's happening is exactly that.
On through that is Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon. Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for coming back on Uncensored. just had a very passionate plea from Ambassador Bamia on behalf of the Palestinians at the UN to allow Palestinians ultimately to have the same human rights as Israelis and to have statehood that goes with that. What is intrinsically wrong with that? Why shouldn't they?
Well, I'm familiar with the shows of Mr. Bamia. I'm seeing him at the UN almost every week. But let's talk about the facts. The facts are that, we left Gaza 20 years ago, Piers, completely. We uprooted the settlement, so-called. We took out the military, even the cemeteries. And we told the people there, build your future. The PA was in charge, and they had a chance to build a future. What happened? Hamas took over and built a terror entity in our backyard. And we saw what happened on October 7th. So they shouldn't blame Israel for what happened. They have to realize that in order for them to have a better future, they have to face the radicals and to fight them. And they are not capable of doing it. Leave Gaza now. Let's speak about Judea and Samaria, where you have the Palestinian Authority in charge today. They are not capable of fighting terrorists. In cities like Jenin, Nablus, and even Ramallah, they have a lot of troops, a lot of funding, but they are not capable to stand up and push back against radicals. But when that day will come, that they will be able to fight radicals, they can speak about a better future. Until that day will happen, we will have to be there, neutralize the threat, exactly like what we are doing now in Gaza.
But what many people say, including some of your closest allies in the world, is that you've gone way beyond any proportionate act of self-defense in Gaza, that you are now waging what many people believe is either a genocide or an ethnic cleansing. You now have openly members of the Israeli government, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in particular, who are detailing in a gleeful manner their plan to take charge and control of the West Bank, of the Gaza Strip, to remove all Palestinians. This is ethnic cleansing they're talking about. It's not even ambiguous. They're not even trying to hide it. So what do you say to that, Ambassador?
You raised a lot of issues. Let me answer all of them. First, don't look at the words of ministers or members of Knesset. Look at the decision of the Israeli cabinet. That's how it works in our democracy. The cabinet decides about the goals of the operation, and the military moves forward or backward. That's regarding the statements. Second, regarding the claim for genocide, and ethnic cleansing, that's blah, blah, blah. Those are lies. It's a campaign of lies. I face it every day at the UN. Yesterday, you interviewed Mr. Tom Fletcher. He spread a lie that we killed 14,000 Palestinian babies out of nowhere. The agency, OCHA, that he heads, put a number of casualties of Palestinian civilians, and a day after, they put a different number and reduced it by 10,000 people. Not 100, not 1,000, 10,000. And look what happened with the New York Times, with the horrible campaign they had with this poor Palestinian boy who was sick, and they said he was starving to death. So there is a campaign of lies against Israel. But when you speak about proportionality, I have to ask you, what should we do to bring the hostages back? The reason we started this war because we were invaded and Israelis were kidnapped from their homes. We have a commitment to bring them back home. This war will not end with 50 hostages in Gaza. Even if the UN will vote about resolutions against Israel and more countries will say that they want to recognize a Palestinian state in the future, it will not change our determination to bring all of them back home to their families.
But this is the whole problem. Your strategy simply isn't working. The last hostage came back in February. Since then, you've launched a 3-month blockade of the Gaza Strip, which involved removing any ability to bring in food or aid or water, starving people in a way that is a war crime by most people's understanding of that. You've now allowed a minimal amount of food to be going in after a huge international outcry. You say that one child the New York Times put on the front page wasn't starving. He clearly was starving. He just had other medical issues going on as well. And there are, we know from all the imagery, well, you can shake your head, but there are, as you know, many images coming out of Gaza.
Let's speak about the New York Times.
Well, hang on, let me finish. Let me finish. I'll let you finish. That there are many images coming out of Gaza of starving children. We're not making this up. And if you really believe it's not happening and all of this is a blood libel, then again, and I've had this conversation with you before, you should be pressurizing your prime minister to allow international media to go into Gaza to verify exactly what is happening. But, you know, I want to play you a clip. This is from the BBC. Oh, hang on. I want to play you a clip from Jeremy Bowen.
You're spreading so many lies.
Hang on one second. Ambassador, with respect, I will let you respond. I will let you respond. But I will let you respond, but let me just play one clip to you of the BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, who's reported from every war zone in the last 25, 30 years. Here's what he reported for the BBC.
So the Jordanians have passed on a message from the Israelis. The Israelis don't want us to film out of the window at the devastation inside Gaza. But I've spent 10 minutes looking at it with my own eyes. And I can tell you that communities in the north of Gaza that I knew well, very vibrant, tens of thousands of people living hard lives, but actually with a remarkable human spirit, are flat. There's nothing left of them.
Now, that's the truth, isn't it, Ambassador? You don't want journalists to go in there because what they're going to uncover and report to the world is utterly horrifying. You have destroyed 2/3, if not more now, of the Gaza Strip. You've displaced 2 million people into a very small area of the Strip. And you now have ministers who you say we shouldn't take seriously, but whose views are never publicly corrected or condemned by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So Smotrich and Ben-Gvir talk openly now about a plan to remove all Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and from the West Bank. And you simply say as the ambassador, well, you shouldn't take them seriously. Why shouldn't we?
Yes,
why shouldn't we? I've not heard Netanyahu. Netanyahu doesn't say what they're saying is wrong.
Keep going. You know, if that's an interview, keep going. For 6 minutes now.
No, now you can respond.
You're showing movies.
I'm not spreading lies.
Respond. If I would have to respond, you know, each allegation, it would take us 15 minutes now. So when you say a lie,
tell me the lie.
You spoke about the New York Times picture. Let's speak about that for a minute. That was blood libel. When you put a picture of a sick Palestinian boy who has a disease and you claim that he was starving, that was a lie. And by the way, they retracted that. But the way they retracted it was also shameful. They put it in a small page on their Twitter with
but to be clear, I said that other children were starving. I said other children were starving. Do you deny that?
You said that this boy was also starving. You want to rewind it 2 minutes ago?
The boy is clearly.
He was also starving.
The boy is clearly. The boy was clearly. The boy was clearly emaciated, Ambassador. Clearly emaciated. So yes, he has a medical condition, but also he's clearly not eating, right?
No,
so
that's
why
not
deny
true.
what we see with our own eyes?
So look at his brother when you can see in the picture that his brother is well fed and he has no issues with the family. But this boy, because
this boy is not eating, right? So, fine. But is your position, to be clear, that are you saying no children are starving in Gaza? Is that your position?
I'm telling you that there is no starvation in Gaza. There is a starvation campaign, a very successful one, by the way. And this campaign is that.
Well, Donald Trump believes there's a starvation.
Wait, let me
Gaza.
finish. With all due respect, with this campaign, that is the reason you don't have a ceasefire now. Because Hamas believes that because now they get the support of the international community, all of a sudden they don't need to negotiate with Israel because aid is coming in. They can take over the aid again, and we can speak about what's happened with the UN not picking up the aid because of Hamas. They will not tell you that, but you have aid inside Gaza that the UN is not capable of distributing it. But it's easier to blame Israel. So for Hamas now, they make a mistake. They think they shouldn't negotiate with us. But I tell you that we will not stop this war with the hostages in Gaza, regardless of what you're going to say, regardless of the blood libel we saw at the New York Times and other media outlets. We know it's a campaign, but this campaign will not change our determination to bring them home. We will not leave them in the tunnels, regardless of all those lies and all those declarations.
Do you accept that if there is an attempt to move the Palestinian population out of Gaza completely, that would represent ethnic cleansing and a war crime? Do you accept that in principle?
Absolutely not. You know, I think President Trump put it forward, and he said that it should require consent. If somebody in Gaza wants to move now to a different place He should be allowed to do it. Nobody should force him. But if he wants to move
And
out,
what if they don't want to? What if it's involuntary?
If you want to move now from London to New York, or from New York to London, you can do that. You can apply for a student visa.
I'm asking about if it's involuntary.
No,
what if it's involuntary?
No, absolutely not. I'm talking about consent from both sides. Consent
right,
of the
but if there's no
individual
consent, do you accept if there is no consent from the Palestinian people to be moved, displaced out of Gaza?
Absolutely.
Let me finish my question.
No one is speaking about.
Ambassador, let me ask you a precise question so the viewers can understand. If it is done without their consent, in other words, they are forcefully displaced out of Gaza, out of the West Bank, would you accept that is ethnic cleansing and a war crime if that is what happens?
No one is speaking about that. That is something which is not acceptable.
They are. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are literally talking about that.
No one
They're
is
two
speaking
senior
about,
members of your government.
No one is speaking
they
about...
They are literally speaking about it, Ambassador. With respect, they are literally, that is what they're speaking about.
I'm a representative of the Israeli government, and I'm telling you, and you can look at the protocols of all the debates in the government and the cabinet. It was never discussed. It's not on the table. And also President Trump's vision was about offering a possibility for people to relocate. It happened in Ukraine. It happened in different areas in the world when people wanted to move to a different place. If they want to do it, and by the way, they can come back afterward if they want to. But why only the people in Gaza are not being allowed to even think about a future in a different place? Why, if they want to live in one of the Arab countries, or if they want to come to the US or to Europe, why not even giving them the option to discuss it? Why you say, no, you have to stay there for eternity? Well, when all other citizens of the world are allowed to think about a future in a different place.
Okay, well, why don't Israelis move out of Israel then and let the Gazans go and live there?
Well, Israelis, if they want to move, they can move. And the people of Gaza, if they want to find a different future, they should be allowed to do that. But I think you touched a point. I think some people in Gaza, the radicals, they don't want a better future. They don't care about the future of their children. They care about eliminating Israel. And that is the core of the problem. It's not about where they live and how they live. It's about, the fact that some elements in Gaza, the radicals one, don't want to see the existence of Israel, period. Read the constitution of Hamas. Read what the muwakama, the resistance for the jihadic means. That's the essence of their existence. And even today, when there are negotiations offering them to go to exile, to live a very good life in different countries in the Middle East, you know what they say? We don't want to live in a different place. We want to stay in Gaza and to fight the jihad against Israel. That is the main problem. If you look to what happened in the last 20 years, how many billions of dollars were invested in Gaza by the UN, by the US, by the EU, and that money wasn't used to build a better society, a better future. It was used to build hate and weapons of mass destruction against Israel.
The biggest problem, it seems to me, Thomas Friedman, the New York Times columnist, wrote a great column today in which he said the reality of what is happening now in this war is that you have the worst Palestinian leadership ever with Hamas, and you have the worst, most far right-wing Israeli government ever as well. In other words, you have the worst of the worst leading both sides in this war, both of whom now appear increasingly wedded to the destruction of the other. And the victims in all this are the Israeli citizens and the Palestinian citizens who are not members of Hamas, or the Israelis who are not signed up to this worldview expressed by Gvir and Smotrich of getting rid of all Palestinians. That is not what most Israelis actually want, I don't believe. Maybe they do. I don't believe they want a form of ethnic cleansing. What they want is to try and get a solution and peace, but there is no will for peace. There's no will on the Israeli government side to bring this to an end. Because the moment it ends, Netanyahu gets held accountable for what happened on October the 7th, and he has to be back in a criminal court facing corruption charges. He has no incentive to end it. Hamas have no incentive to end it either. They just want to keep killing as many Jews as they can possibly kill. I don't make any pretense that that's what they want to do. But you have the worst of the worst leaders on both sides now in an implacable war which shows no sign of ending, and neither side wants it to end. And that is the absolute tragedy about what is happening now in Gaza.
Pierce, it's a shameful comparison. How dare Thomas Friedman equate the Prime Minister of Israel, who was elected by the people of Israel, to the Hamas regime. We have a democracy. We have elections. Prime Minister Netanyahu was elected. Hamas took over control over Gaza, and there was no elections there, and they actually shoot the opposition there. So to make that comparison, it's shameful. It's shameful, and that Prime Minister Netanyahu, and you can say a lot of things about him, but he always tried to delay conflicts and to avoid wars. But this war was brought upon us, and he had no choice to defend Israel and to fight to bring the hostages back. That is his responsibility. He was elected to protect the people of Israel. If somebody comes and kidnaps innocent Israelis, we expect the leader of the country to bring them back. That is duty. And that's what he's doing now, representing the people of Israel. So I think any comparison between Netanyahu and Hamas is not acceptable.
Well, let's remind people that Benjamin Netanyahu actively supported funding Hamas to the tune of billions of dollars. He wanted to create a divide and rule with the Palestinian Authority. He thought that would make Israel more secure. In fact, it had the opposite effect. It's made Israel far less secure, as has this relentless bombardment and destruction of Gaza, the killing of more than 60,000 Palestinians, 20,000 plus children. None of this has made Israel safer. It's made it more dangerous to be an Israeli. It's made it more dangerous to be a Jew living around the world. And as somebody who has always supported Israel and has many Israeli and Jewish friends, I speak as a friend when I say, end this madness. This is completely insane. The rest of the world is now looking at Israel utterly aghast, even your closest allies, even your friends, even your supporters. And they're saying, when is enough enough? This has to stop. And I just don't understand why, and I've interviewed you many times. I've always found you a very respectful person to interview, and I appreciate you coming back on. But I cannot believe that you don't wake up in the morning now and see the clarity of how incredibly unpopular this war strategy is now making Israel, and that also it's not achieving its aims. You're not getting the hostages released. You're not beating Hamas because they're still operating and holding you to ransom with the hostages. None of this is working. All you're doing is apparently doing exactly what Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have articulated is the real plan, which is getting the Palestinians out of Gaza. And if you do that, then Israel will be hated for the rest of my life. And that's just a reality. And I don't get it. I don't know why the sensible Israelis are not speaking up and saying, enough of this. We're not being held ransom by this hard right government anymore, doing this crap in our names.
Well, on October 7th, Pierce, I was in Israel. I was a member of the coalition of the government of Netanyahu. And I can tell you that if we wanted to evacuate the people of Gaza, we would have done it by now. Believe me, we had the capabilities. It wasn't the decision of the government. And you looked at the way we operated in Gaza, when 900 Israeli soldiers died during the operation, is because we have to maneuver in a very careful manner in order to minimize civilian casualties. That's why this war is so difficult for us, and it's so long. It's the longest war in our history. And the price is a heavy price. But I have to tell you one thing. Today, there's a different situation. Despite everything you said, that, we are being condemned, but I think the threat of Hamas today is not the same threat we had on October 7th. The threat of Hezbollah is not the same, and the threat of Iran is not the same. So yes, we change things, but we have to finish the job. And finishing the job is the day when the hostages will be back home. We have to realize that. How can you explain to the families of those people after 2 years that we concluded the military operation and we left the hostages behind? I cannot explain that. No one can explain that.
I asked John Mersheimer, I asked economist and politician, foreign affairs and professor of the Columbia University, Jeffrey Sachs. But none of these important people have answered a citizen which is important, which is the first constituent of any civilization, if it believes in democracy, is us, the country and the world. Us, I mean the peoples in Europe. Us, I mean the people in Australia. Us, I mean the people in New Zealand. Us, I mean the 27 countries and the Nordic countries, Canada and the United States, that have not reacted today strong enough, since Vietnam to Palestine. Because if you see, and I insist on this, and you should check my problem about from Vietnam to Palestine, being the most censored Canadian YouTuber, most censored that from 4 million to none, has told you, and this that since Vietnam to Palestine, and now Greenland, it needed to come to you, as I predicted to you, not 8 days ago in my last program. Do we need bombs? Because what Donald Trump is doing, and it doesn't matter, imitating Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party and the vision of the world that is we take over by force, we commit genocide against Central Latin America, and that's why Central and Latin Americans are so worried, and Europeans, about the new encounter between the President of the United States of Israel and, or tell me I'm wrong, when 58 vows for Prime Minister of a foreign country expose America to be so corrupted, etc. That's another chapter that we need to dedicate another chapter, but we can say, and we know that they are possessed by Israel, and the same happens in England, and the same happens in Australia, and the same happens in New Zealand, and the same happens in Canada, when we see the Conservative Party saying that away with socialism, ignoring that social issues or social issues and socialism are one and the same. Otherwise, the Nordic countries, Canada, wouldn't be an example of good economy and how to take care of their own citizens, regardless of their condition. But according to the candidate from the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party that say I'm a Zionist, which means we kill anybody that we dislike, and the same words of we have exposed that way before. That's why I'm not putting images right now. It's for you to go back and see my programs and my shows in order to know, understand, and believe that what we're looking for here right now is an independent Canada. That even though the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, has explained wonderfully. Yeah, but it doesn't change a thing about how Canada participated in the mining processes in Central and South America, the exploitation of the Central and South American countries. On the contrary, he said it himself, we benefited from it. But it's okay as long as it doesn't happen to you. Here in Canada, there in the European Union, there in Denmark, there in Holland. But when it happens to you, which I have said for the last 11 years, don't do unto others what you don't want to be done unto you.
Exactly. Prime Minister, it really isn't just extreme radicals. There are huge numbers of people who are concerned about Israel's behavior, frankly, including people like me.
Well,
I
think that if Britain wasn't red for
you've been accused of being a war criminal. That if you went to go to several countries in Europe, you're going to get arrested. This is not just mad campus radicalism. This is a feeling around the world. You said it yourself to us just now. In public opinion around the world, Israel is doing very poorly. And it's doing very poorly because people see a country that is behaving in a way that is not compatible with being a liberal democracy. And therefore, I think you have a problem.
You won't believe what happened when a UK journalist straight up confronted Netanyahu. He completely lost it on live camera. Watch till the end because I'm breaking down every moment and giving my take. Quick question before we dive in. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss my full breakdown.
There is a huge battle today between the forces of civilization, the forces of modernity, and the very fanatic forces who want to take us back to the early Middle Ages. And do so with a violence that is unimaginable. You've seen these pictures of people cutting open the chest of an enemy, these Islamists, tearing out the heart. The person is still alive and eating the heart. That tells you something. Now, that mentality, that fanaticism has to be confronted. It will move and invade your countries and it will destroy them. Israel is not just fighting our battle, it's fighting the battle against radical Islam that threatens the future of the world. And I think many people thought communism would threaten the world or China would threaten the world. I'm saying that this untethered force of an extremist ideology that knows no limits, if it has nuclear weapons, the ballistic missiles to deliver them, and the masses that will destroy democracies, burn Christians.
Prime Minister.
We're committed to defending Christians around the world and in the Middle East. If they win the day, we all lose. Israel is defending itself, but in so doing, we're defending Western civilization.
Prime Minister, that is one way of viewing the world, and I have some sympathy with some of what you've said. Let me give you another way, which is that many people around the world see the state of Israel as a country that is exclusively using military force, that has killed 70,000 people in Gaza, that is doing nothing to create a sustainable future for people there. That is a country, you've been accused of being a war criminal. That if you went to go to several countries in Europe, you're going to get arrested. This is not just mad campus radicalism. This is a feeling around the world. You said it yourself to us just now. In public opinion around the world, Israel is doing very poorly. And it's doing very poorly because people see a country that is behaving in a way that is not compatible with being a liberal democracy. And therefore, I think you have a problem. I think that loss of public opinion, what struck me from your autobiography was how subtly and for how long you have understood this. You know that political power comes from public opinion, and you know that you need to win the battle of public opinion, and you're losing it. You've absolutely lost it in Europe, but much more worryingly for you, you're losing it in America. And I think that what you've just told me about fanaticism is true in part, but it is not going to shape public opinion. People are going to roll their eyes and say, he's saying that anybody who says anything critical about Israel is anti-Semitic. He's giving this large, this story about fanaticism, and he's not accepting the fact that Israel is behaving in a way that we think is incompatible with the kind of liberal democracy that he claims
Well,
to
the
be.
liberal democracies that fought the battles from World War II to Afghanistan to Iraq and so on, the ratio of combatants to non-combatants killed was 6-1, 7-1. And in Gaza, because Hamas was forcing people to stay in urban areas at gunpoint, the ratio is about 1.5-1. And we lost a lot of soldiers because we didn't carpet bomb. We
That
didn't
is disputed, Prime Minister.
We didn't do.
People have different ratios as well, including
I'm telling
Nigeria.
you don't actually, but that's not the point. It certainly wasn't 6-1 or 7-1, and we certainly didn't carpet bomb, which we could have done right away. We've lost a lot of people by my refusal and the IDF's own mores in making sure that doesn't happen. Now, if you have the densest urban warfare theater in history, with 500 kilometers of terror tunnels underneath, 50 meters below, 50 meters above, everything booby-trapped, and you don't come in and just bomb the place to smithereens, which we didn't. I mean, we had everything booby-trapped. We moved the population out, and then you have to fight the Hamas in there. The ratios in Mosul, the ratios in Fallujah, the ratios elsewhere, there's nothing comparison, and that was nothing compared to what our brave soldiers had to face in Gaza. So I dispute the fact. The argument that you put forward is being put forward. It doesn't make it true. What is true is that Israel is fighting these worst killers, these people who took not only beheaded our men, raped our women, and then murdered them, burned our babies alive, and took 255 hostages, which we took out. Nobody believed that we got them out. These are barbarians, and they're given a free look. I have demonstrations on behalf of Hamas. Notice that they're burning the flag of Israel and the flag of the UK, the flag of Israel and the flag of America. When you have pro-Israel demonstrations, they wave Israeli flags, they wave American flags, they wave British flags. These people are against you, whether you recognize it or not. They will sweep away your societies, your freedoms, your ideas, the values that we cherish, exactly
Prime
as you
Minister,
do.
it really isn't just extreme radicals. There are
I didn't say that,
huge
Jim.
numbers of people who are concerned about Israel's behavior, frankly, including people like me.
Well,
Friends of Israel who
I
are
think that if
concerned-
Britain was invaded, forgive me, if Britain was invaded and you had the equivalent in Britain, your population is what, 65 million, something like that, 60 million, right? So you're about 6 times our size. So if you had on one day about 8,000 Brits murdered, mutilated, raped, and kidnapped, and they came right next to London, what would you do? We know what you did. We know exactly what Britain did, and I don't hold Churchill or the British government or the British people who supported him responsible for saying you shouldn't act that way. You bombed the living daylights out of German cities.
What made this confrontation so striking wasn't just the raised voices or the tension in the room. It was the collision of two completely different worldviews, each convinced it was speaking from moral high ground, and neither willing to fully step into the other's reality. Watching a UK journalist directly challenge Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't shocking because journalists should ask hard questions. It was shocking because, for once, the script didn't go the way Netanyahu usually expects it to. Netanyahu opens with a sweeping, almost cinematic framing of the conflict. In his telling, this isn't about borders, policy failures, or even Gaza itself. It's a civilizational war. Civilization versus barbarism, modernity versus medieval fanaticism. He invokes imagery so extreme it's clearly designed to overwhelm the listener emotionally. Militants tearing out hearts, eating them while victims are still alive. Whether or not those specific images are representative, the intent is clear. This is shock and awe rhetoric. He wants the audience to feel fear before they feel doubt. And it's a strategy he's refined over decades. By framing Hamas, and by extension, Israel's enemies, as an existential, almost supernatural evil, Netanyahu places Israel not just as a nation defending itself, but as the frontline soldier for Western civilization itself. He isn't just asking for understanding, he's demanding allegiance. If Israel falls, he says, you fall. Your freedoms fall. Your democracies burn. Christians will be hunted. The world slides backward into chaos. It's an argument designed to leave no room for nuance. You're either with him or you're naive, or worse. The journalist doesn't deny that fanaticism exists. In fact, he explicitly says he has sympathy for parts of Netanyahu's argument. That's what makes the challenge so effective. This isn't a heckler. This isn't a radical protester. This is someone engaging in good faith and still saying, you have a problem. And that problem is public opinion. The journalist calmly lays out what Netanyahu is trying desperately to deflect. Across Europe, across much of the world, Israel is no longer seen as a liberal democracy acting within moral bounds. It's seen as a military power that has killed tens of thousands of civilians, flattened Gaza, and offered no credible vision for what comes next. Whether Netanyahu agrees with that perception almost doesn't matter. Politics doesn't run on what you believe is fair. It runs on what people believe is true. This is where Netanyahu visibly bristles. He's deeply aware of the power of public opinion. His own autobiography makes that clear, but he can't accept the idea that Israel's loss of moral standing might be self-inflicted. Instead, he defaults to a familiar defense. Criticism of Israel is exaggerated, manipulated, or rooted in hostility toward Jews. He doesn't explicitly say anti-Semitism here, but the implication hangs in the air. The journalist calls this out directly, saying people will simply roll their eyes at that framing. And he's right. For many observers, that argument no longer persuades, it alienates. Netanyahu's response is to shift from morality to math. He brings up casualty ratios, comparing Gaza to conflicts like World War II, Iraq, Afghanistan, Mosul, and Fallujah. He argues that Israel's combatant-to-civilian casualty ratio is historically low, especially given the density of Gaza and Hamas's alleged use of civilians as human shields. He insists Israel could have carpet-bombed Gaza into oblivion, but chose not to, even at the cost of Israeli soldiers' lives. This is where the conversation becomes deeply uncomfortable because both sides are talking past each other. Netanyahu is arguing legality and military ethics. The journalist is arguing legitimacy and perception. Netanyahu says, we didn't do worse things. The journalist is saying, people think what you did was already too much. Those are not the same debate. When Netanyahu describes Hamas as barbarians, beheaders, rapists, baby killers, he's not inventing atrocities. October 7th was real, horrific, and traumatic. But the problem is how he uses that horror. Every time the journalist tries to bring the conversation back to Gaza's civilians, Netanyahu pulls it back to Hamas's crimes. Every civilian death becomes Hamas's fault. Every bomb dropped becomes a tragic necessity. There's no space left for Israeli agency, Israeli mistakes, or Israeli accountability. That's the moment the journalist pushes hardest. He points out that concern about Israel's behavior isn't limited to extreme radicals. It includes mainstream journalists, politicians, academics, and ordinary citizens who are not pro-Hamas, not anti-Israel by default, and not interested in burning Western democracies to the ground. They're simply disturbed by what they see. Netanyahu's refusal to meaningfully engage with that discomfort is precisely why public opinion keeps slipping away from him. Then comes Netanyahu's favorite hypothetical: what if Britain was invaded? It's a powerful rhetorical move. He asks the audience to imagine thousands of Brits murdered, raped, kidnapped in a single day. He invokes Churchill and the bombing of German cities, arguing that Britain responded with overwhelming force and wasn't morally condemned for it. He implies that critics are holding Israel to a standard no other nation has ever met. But this analogy has cracks. World War II didn't unfold under 24/7 global media scrutiny. Civilian deaths weren't live-streamed to smartphones. International law has evolved, expectations have changed, and most importantly, Britain's bombing of German cities is not universally celebrated today. It's debated, criticized, and morally interrogated. Using past excesses to justify present actions doesn't reassure critics. It confirms their fears. What Netanyahu seems unable or unwilling to grasp is that fear-based rhetoric no longer works the way it once did. Younger generations, especially in Europe and America, don't respond well to us versus them civilizational framing. They're skeptical of governments that dismiss civilian suffering as collateral damage, no matter the justification. When Netanyahu leans harder into apocalyptic language, he doesn't strengthen his case, he narrows his audience. And this is where the journalist truly lands his point. Netanyahu may be winning battles on the ground, but he is losing the story. In the modern world, wars are fought on timelines as much as on territory. Images shape narratives faster than speeches ever can. And no amount of invoking medieval barbarism can erase the visual reality of destroyed neighborhoods, dead children, and displaced families. Netanyahu's insistence that Israel is defending Western civilization might resonate with some, but for many others, it sounds like an excuse that avoids moral introspection. The confrontation doesn't end with a clear winner, but it does expose something important. Netanyahu isn't just angry at the journalist. He's angry at a world that no longer accepts his framing by default. He's angry that moral authority is slipping through his fingers, despite his certainty that Israel is right. And the journalist, for his part, isn't denying Israel's right to defend itself. He's saying that how you defend yourself matters, not just legally, but morally and politically. Ignoring that reality won't make it go away. It will only accelerate the isolation Netanyahu claims to fear. In the end, what made Netanyahu lose it wasn't the question itself. It was the implication behind it. That Israel's greatest threat right now might not be Hamas rockets or terror tunnels, but the growing belief that its actions no longer align with the values it claims to defend.
And I said it on my public discourses here in Canada and political discourses for the liberation of the people that got arrested on the pandemic, which now has been found in court just recently, a few days ago, here in Canada, that according to the court decision, that the arrest of these 4 dissidents, so-called dissidents, because they were weapons on some or there. Yeah, here in Canada we carry weapons if we live in the north because we hunt. But there was no enough proof to say that they were intending to commit terrorist attacks like the government of Liberal Justin Trudeau applied the Emergencies Act, which is not to be applied unless there is a national calamity, disaster, like we are under war, the United States attacked us in different fronts, or Venezuela, or Russia, or the Chinese communists. But I agree. It was about time that somebody in the Prime Ministry in Canada said something against the United States abuses. But it only happened, like this program happened for the last 11 years, when it touches them, not before. They don't give a damn about Central and South America. They always cooperate with the United States in the submission and the participation and bribery of the elites, as long as the elites kill and destroy 700,000 people have died only in Colombia since 1948-9 of April. But they were killed in 1928 because they said, okay, you're abusing our rights. We work for you guys at United Fruit Company. We need you to pay us decent salaries. But now they killed more than 1,000 people there that were protesting and asking for their rights and their labor rights. McPherson is being attacked by the Israeli lobby. Everything you're going to see today has a background, and that background is always and will always going to be the state of Israel. I don't want to be called anti-Semite. The problem is that if you don't understand that it's the state of Israel influence in the Western tradition, in the northern countries and the European Union, etc., when not elected personnel like von der Leyen and others, like Davos, the World Economic Forum, is trying to tell us that they dictate policy in foreign and domestic affairs, is the most outstanding abuse of power and corporate power that this program has denounced as corporate intelligence for the last 11 years since I wrote that book. In gold we trust, our path to eternity. It's not in God we trust like it says it used to say in the courts in the United States. Now it's out of it, very few out of 37 states in the United States are against the BDS and the influence of the state of Israel in the United States, Canada, the European Union, and the Western tradition itself. How corrupted, how insidious, how pernicious that influence is. I'm sorry to say, but I'm not, when I say it in public, dangerous, pernicious, insidious influence of the state of Israel, no matter what, in every country. So that's something that Mr. Mark Carney forgot to mention. Welcome to my show. React today as part of the World's Wealth Project 2026.
ICE detained a man for loitering at a construction site. They didn't know he was a retired fire captain fixing his own house. This judge was furious.
The subject was observed loitering near an active construction zone and appeared to be soliciting work. He fit the general profile of an undocumented laborer we were tracking. He became belligerent when approached.
I wasn't soliciting work. I was building a deck on my own house. I served 30 years as a fire captain in this city. I have the Medal of Valor. I don't need to show you my papers to stand in my own backyard.
Let me be very clear. You profiled a decorated civil servant because he was working with his hands. That is not police work. That is harassment. Case dismissed with prejudice. And officer, I am holding you in contempt for unlawful detention.